you've got your static site generators. These take your input files and turn them into output files. So, how do static site generators do that, right? Well, they do a bunch of voodoo magic behind the scenes that allow you to run a command. So, like for Gridsome, it's Gridsum build. It looks through all of your input files, and then it crushes them all down into efficient output files, throws them into a dist folder, and in doing that, you're ending up with very efficient HTML files that you can serve to users. And they come with all sorts of every static site generator comes with a bunch of really cool, useful features that can help improve your user's experience. So, like for Gridsome specifically, and it's built to model after the Gatsby structure. One of the things they both offer is your images will come in blurry initially, and then as the images actually load, it'll pop the image fully into focus for your users. So as an example of that, if we come over here to this and we refresh the page, so you can see how this initially will have like that blurry halo around, and then once the image actually loads, after the rest of the page loads, it pops the image into focus. If we go into the events, I might have more images in here, but maybe not. Do not. So, but that's the kind of stuff that we can benefit from when we use a static site generator. Now, the trick is, because we need to run a build command, right? So, and usually your input files are coming from the src or some sort of source folder, and then it spits it out into an output folder, which for Gridsome happens to be dist. So we've got our input, convert it into an output, crush it down into these efficient files. So we get a bunch of benefits along with that, such as the lazy image loading. You get some, you can get quicker routing, but the trick is, and we're gonna clear this up too. This is the build command. We're gonna make this all line up so that it looks nice and pretty. It's gonna be our large umbrella here. So your build command has to run every time. And now part of this input here can actually be, you can have data sources. So you can have a CMS, like say WordPress. I'm sure nobody's heard of that before. So you can have WordPress come in here, and particularly benefiting from GraphQL, which we're going to drop here, even though it's kind of not quite where that goes. But you can, with the benefits of GraphQL, you can very efficiently loop through, grab all of your CMS data that you want, and then like smush it into your pages. So it uses GraphQL and what are called templates. So this kind of feeds into here. Try and make this as pretty as we can. Not how that works. So your template file will be something like, it can say, I'll pass a post ID in, and then for every post ID, create a post page, and then your post page, which would be, we flip back to this Airtable starter, under the events, right? So GraphQL first, when it generates this page, it'll grab a list of all of the events, and you can specify what you want about those events. So in this case, we say we want the event name, we want the event description, and we want the event time, and we want the link to the event. which is what consists of these cards. You've got the title, you got the date, you have the description, and then you have the link, which feeds into that full details. Once you have that, you can create your template page, which spits out here. And then on this page, you can say, okay, but now that I have a specific post, I also want to grab the attachments in addition to all the things we already have. So when this page is being created, Gridsome will go out, it'll grab all of your files and all the data for each page, and then it'll basically hard code it into the page. Like if we go to view source, so you've got all of the optimized code. So like these data-v-icons, that's something that's coming from Vue. Here we see that board game night. It's not popping that in with JavaScript at some point. There's no JavaScript here to go out and grab the data and then push it into the page later. It's all starting with just static HTML. So we get the benefits of templates, creating pages. You've got your GraphQL pulling all the data in, and I'm sure there's actually a better source here. This is probably a better image. We have our CMS. You can also just like hard code data. You can use like markdown pages, which I use on terabytetiger.com. But you can do like whatever source you want. You run the build command and then it spits out, and you can just push it to Netlify. You can push it to AWS, surge.sh, whatever you want. Like one-liner terminal commands to push to the browser. With this process, it can get kind of confusing though. Like if we're going to create a new project here. So we're just going to do Gridsum create. So while that does its thing, and that's just going to take a bit to load, we'll talk about another one of the common things you'll see with static site generators. So this is the Gridsum starter page, gridsum.org/starters. And here you can see there's a whole bunch of websites here. And if you wanted to take any of these and use it as a starting point, you can easily do that, where instead of how we did Gridsum create and then the folder name, you can also pass in another value, which is a URL to a Git repository. And it'll take that Git repository, use it as the basis, and basically set you up with whatever code is there as your starting point, which is great because you can do things like start with, for example, this Airtable starter. It'll come pre-configured with all of the Airtable plugin stuff that you need to figure out normally by yourself. And it just comes pre-packaged in the thing for you. Like if we go to the Airtable here, you have this nice README. So for example though, you've got this gridsum.config.js, which is a file that you'll get when you start with this. You get your list of all the plugins that come pre-configured. And then you basically just need to drop a .env file that has Airtable_key and Airtable_base as values there. You can go get those from Airtable, you push them in, and then next thing you know, you're starting to get a working process here. In my experience, one of the hardest parts about just any starter is updating all of the names so that the names make sense. In my case, I'm using a events table since we're doing the idea was like a local event message board kind of thing. So you've got like, oh, everyone's gonna get together and go to the movies on Friday night. You post that up, everyone can show up if it's a special movie event. And then that would all run through Airtable. Now, again, going back to our build command here, coming full circle, you have to run that build command every time that you want to generate your new output, right? So it's not as simple as going to Airtable. So if this is Airtable, and let's say that Airtable is made up of, oops, command. So let's say our Airtable has two events in it. So when we run that build command, we're going to make this look very pretty. So if we create a new event, we go in, we run Gridsome build, it creates that output. Now, as part of that, it goes through, says, okay, we'll add this event, and then we'll add this event. Cool. But now I come in and I say, let's add another event. So now when I create that new event in Airtable, I'm not going into the code. I'm not going into like some markdown file somewhere and saying, okay, now you also have to look at this one, right? But we do have to run our build command. Until that build command runs again, this event isn't going to show up. So if I would add this event and then immediately go over to the web page, we wouldn't see that one. That would be just missing from our site. So using something like Netlify, you can tell Netlify to look at a certain API. When that API sends out a signal to Netlify to say, okay, there's a new post, there's a new event created. It'll ping Netlify, Netlify will say, okie dokie, we gotta run that again. So Netlify will run that build command for you and then spit out your code updated with this event. So then, cool, we've got a new event. And you can keep building your site out like that. Now, one of the downsides to using a static site generator is that build command is going to start taking more and more and more time. The more events that we create, the more pages we've got going on, the more JavaScript we have to compile into files, the longer that's going to take. So at first, it's not going to take that long. We've got 3 events. It'll just take however long it normally takes. But now let's say we add 3 more events. Okay, so now it's going to take not twice as long, because most of the time that it's going to take to build is just your default Gridsome build time, right? But then you'll have your events. If we say that this is 3 events, that's going to be this much time. So we're going to label this as our build time. One. So there's nothing you can do about that initial build time. Like, that's just how long Gridsome takes. Then there's actually a little bit more. There is a little bit of time that you can impact, which is, depending on what plugins you're using, will depend on how efficient that is. So these are going to be plugins. Smaller, just so that it can fit. And then we've got our 3 event block here, right? So when we add 3 more events, it's going to take a little bit longer, and then 3 more events, a little bit longer than that, a little bit longer than that. So over time, we are going to build up to the point where our events are going to make the site take a very long time to build, which is just a general thing you're going to run into if you work with static site generators once they get large. However, they're very, very good at getting a quick thing up and running, especially if you can create that starter style point, which is just a regular site. You don't have to do anything special with Gridsome to make your site compatible. All I did was I created this in this one. I created this, uploaded it as a Git repository, and then I set it as a template so that anyone can go to the GitHub link, click, use this template, and then they've got their fork going on the way. So if you need to spin up multiple sites very quickly, and you can create a base layout like this, and then just spit it out and say, okay, now you can use this, you can use this, you can use this. You can almost think of it like franchising with something like Subway or McDonald's, whatever. You can, you've got that base, and then you can use the same model at all your other locations. So whenever you need to start someone up and running, you can plug them in, say, okay, here's the model we used. You can start and get running, and then you can like tweak it to fit your needs exactly along the way. So that's where static site generators excel, is being able to take that starter and then distribute it to everyone that needs it.